There is a moment in every deepening connection when something shifts. The laughter is still there, the attraction is still alive, the conversations are meaningful, and yet something tightens inside one person. The warmth that once flowed easily becomes cautious. The messages slow down, the energy changes, and you ask yourself, why now? Why, when everything was finally becoming real? The truth is, when something starts to feel real, it stops being fantasy. In the beginning, love is projection. We see what we hope for. We imagine what could be. There is distance, and distance feels safe. But when closeness increases, illusion fades. Now there is vulnerability. Now there is the possibility of loss. Now there is the risk of being truly seen. And being seen is one of the most terrifying experiences for the human ego. When a connection deepens, it touches old wounds, it awakens forgotten fears, the fear of abandonment, the fear of not being enough, the fear of being controlled, the fear of losing independence. These fears often live quietly beneath the surface until intimacy activates them. So people pull away not because they do not feel something, but because they feel too much. Real connection dismantles defenses. It asks a person to lower their armor. It challenges the identity they have built around being strong, independent, or unbothered. And when that identity feels threatened, the psyche reacts. It chooses distance over exposure, silence over vulnerability, withdrawal over emotional risk. Sometimes pulling away is a subconscious test. Will you chase me? Will you prove I matter? Other times it is self-protection. If I leave first, I cannot be left. But here is the deeper truth. Emotional readiness is not the same as emotional desire. Someone can want love deeply and still not be ready to sustain it. They can crave intimacy yet fear its responsibility. Because real love is not just butterflies and excitement. It is accountability. It is consistency. It is emotional presence. When things become real, love stops being an idea and starts becoming a commitment. And commitment confronts the shadow, the hidden parts of ourselves we have not healed. It forces growth. It demands maturity. It requires courage. Not everyone is prepared for that mirror. So if someone pulls away when things start to feel real, understand this. It is rarely about your worth. It is often about their capacity. The right connection will not run from depth. It will not retreat from vulnerability. It will not disappear when emotions intensify. Instead, it will lean in. It will communicate. It will stay present even when fear arises. Because mature love does not escape when it feels real. It chooses to grow through the fear. And that is the difference between attraction and readiness, between desire and emotional courage, between temporary connection and lasting love. When love begins, it often feels light, effortless, almost magical. In the early stages, two people meet each other through curiosity and imagination. They show their best sides. They speak carefully. They reveal stories that are polished, controlled, safe. There is excitement, but there is also distance, and that distance creates comfort. At this stage, love lives in possibility. It is more dream than reality, and dreams rarely threaten us. But when love becomes real, something shifts. The distance shortens, the conversations deepen, the masks begin to slip. Now it is no longer about who you could be. It is about who you are. And that is where vulnerability enters. Real love requires exposure. It asks you to reveal your insecurities, your fears, your flaws, and the parts of yourself you usually protect. It means allowing someone to see you on your worst days, not just your best ones. It means admitting when you are jealous, afraid, confused, or uncertain. The moment love becomes real, you are no longer performing, you are participating. And that participation feels risky because when someone truly sees you, they also gain the power to reject you. The deeper the connection, the greater the potential loss. Vulnerability is not weakness, it is emotional nakedness. It is standing without armor and trusting that the other person will not use your openness against you. For many people, this is where fear awakens. The heart recognizes that this connection now has meaning, it matters. And when something matters, it can hurt. So the instinct to protect oneself becomes stronger. Walls that once seemed unnecessary suddenly feel essential. Silence feels safer than honesty. Distance feels safer than closeness. Real love also demands accountability. It asks for consistency, emotional responsibility, and presence. It is no longer about chemistry alone. It is about choosing each other repeatedly, even when moods change, when misunderstandings happen, when imperfections surface. That level of depth removes illusion and replaces it with truth, and truth requires courage. When love becomes real, it stops being a fantasy you can walk away from easily. It becomes an emotional investment. It carries weight. It creates attachment. And attachment makes the heart vulnerable to both fulfillment and pain. That is why real love can feel overwhelming. It is not just about feeling good. It is about being seen, known, and emotionally exposed in a way that changes you. Intimacy has a quiet way of reaching places within us that we did not know were still sensitive. At the surface, closeness feels warm and affirming. It brings comfort, laughter, shared secrets, and emotional safety. But beneath that warmth, intimacy does something deeper. It begins to uncover memories, fears, and patterns that were formed long before this new connection ever existed. When someone moves closer to us emotionally, they do not just meet the person we are today. They also encounter the child we once were, the heartbreaks we never fully processed, and the disappointments we buried beneath strength. Intimacy removes distraction. It slows everything down enough for old wounds to resurface. A person who once felt abandoned may suddenly feel anxious when a message goes unanswered. Someone who grew up feeling unseen may become overly sensitive to small changes in tone. A past betrayal can turn harmless situations into imagined threats. These reactions are rarely about the present moment alone. They are echoes of earlier experiences that shape the nervous system to expect loss, rejection, or instability. The deeper the connection becomes, the more exposed these patterns feel. Intimacy invites dependency, not in a weak sense, but in a human one. It creates emotional reliance, and reliance activates fear. If this person matters to me, I can lose them. If I care deeply, I can be hurt deeply. The mind remembers previous pain and attempts to prevent it from happening again. Sometimes this activation appears as withdrawal. A person may grow distant without fully understanding why. Other times it shows up as jealousy, control, overthinking, or sudden emotional intensity. It can even create internal conflict, wanting closeness while simultaneously fearing it. The heart moves forward, but the nervous system pulls back. Old wounds do not disappear simply because we meet someone kind. They remain dormant until intimacy provides the right conditions to awaken them, and when they awaken, they demand attention. They ask to be acknowledged rather than avoided. Intimacy, in this way, becomes a mirror. It reflects not only love and connection, but also unresolved pain. It reveals where healing is incomplete. It shows us the stories we still carry about ourselves, about being unworthy, replaceable, or too much. When closeness activates these old wounds, it is not proof that something is wrong with the relationship. It is often proof that something within us is asking to be understood, soothed, and finally healed. When someone begins to pull away just as the connection deepens, it can feel confusing and painful. The warmth is still there, the bond still alive, yet something shifts. Messages become shorter. Vulnerability decreases. Presence turns into distance. From the outside, it may look like disinterest, but often it is not a lack of feeling that creates distance. It is fear. Pulling away is frequently a form of self-protection. Human beings are wired to avoid pain. The mind constantly scans for threats, not only physical ones, but emotional ones as well. When a relationship starts to matter, it becomes a potential source of both joy and hurt. The deeper the attachment grows, the greater the perceived risk. If this person becomes important, they also gain the power to disappoint, reject, or leave. For someone who has experienced betrayal, abandonment, criticism, or emotional instability in the past, closeness can feel dangerous. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. Even if the current partner is kind and trustworthy, the nervous system may still react as if history is about to repeat itself. Distance then becomes a shield. Withdrawal becomes a strategy to regain control. Sometimes pulling away is an unconscious attempt to reduce vulnerability. If I do not invest too much, I cannot lose too much. If I create space, I can avoid depending on you. It is easier to step back voluntarily than to be pushed away unexpectedly. In this way, distancing becomes a way of choosing pain on one's own terms rather than risking pain imposed by someone else. There is also a fear of exposure. Intimacy reveals insecurities, flaws, and unmet needs. Not everyone feels equipped to have those parts of themselves seen. Pulling away can be an attempt to preserve dignity, to protect an image of strength, or to avoid confronting personal limitations. It is not always about the other person's behavior. It is often about internal discomfort. Self-protection can look cold, but beneath it is usually sensitivity. It can appear indifferent, but underneath there is often overwhelm. The person who withdraws may care deeply yet lack the tools to stay present when emotions intensify. Distance in these moments is not always rejection. It is sometimes a coping mechanism, an imperfect effort to feel safe when the heart begins to open wider than it knows how to handle. Desire is powerful. It can make the heart race, the mind imagine a future, and the body lean instinctively toward closeness. It creates longing, attraction, and emotional intensity. When two people feel desire, it can seem like the perfect foundation for a relationship. There is chemistry, curiosity, and a genuine wish to be close. But desire, no matter how strong, is not the same as readiness. A person can deeply want love and still be unprepared to sustain it. Desire is emotional and instinctive. It lives in fantasy, in hope, in the excitement of what could be. Readiness, however, lives in responsibility. It requires emotional regulation, communication skills, self-awareness, and the ability to remain present when things are no longer easy. Desire is about wanting to feel good. Readiness is about being willing to work through discomfort. When a relationship begins to deepen, it demands more than attraction. It asks for consistency. It asks for vulnerability even after misunderstandings. It requires patience when moods shift, reassurance when fears arise, and accountability when mistakes are made. Someone may crave intimacy yet struggle with these responsibilities. They may love the feeling of connection but feel overwhelmed by the maintenance of it. Often, this gap appears when the initial excitement fades. In the early stages, effort feels natural because everything is new and stimulating. But as the connection stabilizes, deeper patterns emerge. Old fears surface, communication challenges appear, emotional needs become clearer. At this point, desire alone is not enough to carry the relationship forward. A person who is not ready may begin to feel pressure where there once was excitement. They may withdraw, not because they no longer care, but because the relationship is asking for growth they have not yet developed. Emotional maturity cannot be rushed by attraction. Healing cannot be forced by chemistry. There is also the reality that readiness involves timing. Someone may genuinely value another person yet still be entangled in unresolved pain, personal instability, or unclear life direction. Wanting love does not automatically mean having the capacity to protect it, nurture it, and remain steady within it. Desire opens the door, but readiness determines whether someone can stay in the room. Without readiness, even the strongest attraction can falter under the weight of real emotional commitment. The ego is not arrogance, nor is it simple pride. It is the identity we construct to survive. It is the image we present to the world so we can feel accepted, valued, and in control. From a young age, we learn which parts of ourselves are praised and which parts are rejected. Slowly, we begin shaping a version of ourselves that feels safer to show. We become strong instead of sensitive, independent instead of needy, agreeable instead of honest. The ego becomes armor. When a relationship remains light and surface level, that armor stays intact. We can maintain the role we have built. We can control how we are perceived. But when intimacy deepens, something unsettling begins to happen. The other person starts seeing beyond the surface. They notice inconsistencies, they sense hidden emotions, they observe reactions we cannot fully disguise. The mask becomes harder to hold in place. Being truly seen means being exposed beyond the persona. It means someone recognizing not only our strengths, but also our insecurities, our fears, our contradictions. And for the ego, this feels dangerous. Because the ego depends on control, it depends on maintaining a stable identity. When someone sees the parts we try to conceal, it threatens the narrative we have carefully created about who we are. There is also the fear of judgment. If you see my flaws, will you still choose me? If you recognize my weakness, will you lose respect? The ego whispers that love is conditional, that approval must be earned through perfection or strength. So when someone comes close enough to see behind the curtain, defensiveness often arises. We may deflect with humor, withdraw emotionally, or create distance to reestablish control. Sometimes the fear is subtler. Being seen can awaken shame we did not realize we carried. Old criticisms from childhood, past failures, or previous rejections can resurface when someone looks at us too closely. The ego would rather protect us from that discomfort than risk vulnerability. True intimacy requires authenticity. It asks us to stand without pretense and allow another person to witness our humanity in its entirety. For the ego, this feels like standing without protection. Yet beneath that fear lies a deeper longing, the desire to be accepted without performance. The conflict between protection and connection creates tension. The ego resists exposure, even while the heart quietly hopes to be known completely. Fear does not disappear simply because two people care about each other. Even in the healthiest connections, moments of doubt, insecurity, and emotional vulnerability arise. The difference is not the absence of fear, but the response to it. Immature love reacts to fear by escaping. Mature love responds by staying. When emotions intensify and old wounds surface, it is easy to misinterpret discomfort as incompatibility. A difficult conversation can feel like a threat. A misunderstanding can feel like rejection. In those moments, the instinct to withdraw, defend, or shut down becomes strong. Leaving seems easier than leaning in. Silence feels safer than honesty. But mature love recognizes that fear is often a signal for growth, not an alarm to run. Staying does not mean tolerating harm or ignoring red flags. It means choosing communication over avoidance when both people are acting in good faith. It means being willing to say, "This scared me," instead of pretending not to care. It means listening when your partner expresses insecurity rather than dismissing it. Mature love understands that two nervous systems are learning to feel safe together. That process is not always smooth. When fear arises, mature love slows down instead of speeding away. It asks questions instead of making assumptions. It seeks clarity instead of creating distance. There is an understanding that intimacy will inevitably activate vulnerabilities, and that those vulnerable moments are opportunities to deepen trust rather than weaken it. Consistency becomes essential. Anyone can be present when things are easy and emotions are light. Staying through fear means remaining emotionally available when tension appears. It means resisting the urge to punish, withdraw affection, or create uncertainty as a form of control. Stability becomes more important than pride. Mature love also takes responsibility for personal triggers. Instead of blaming the partner for every emotional reaction, there is reflection. Why did this affect me so strongly? What part of my past is speaking right now? This self-awareness allows the relationship to grow instead of fracture. Choosing to stay through fear requires courage. It asks both people to value the connection more than their defensive habits. It replaces impulsive retreat with intentional presence. In doing so, love transforms from fragile excitement into something steady, resilient, and deeply rooted in mutual trust. So if someone pulls away when things start to feel real, do not immediately assume it is the end of the story, but also do not ignore what it reveals. Real love will always test the parts of us that are unhealed. It will challenge the masks we wear and the defenses we rely on. It will bring fear to the surface, not to destroy the connection, but to show us where growth is required. Some people will step back when that fear appears. Others will gather the courage to step forward. You cannot force someone to be ready. You cannot love someone into emotional maturity, and you cannot shrink yourself to make another person feel safe in their avoidance. But you can choose differently. You can choose to become someone who does not run from depth, someone who communicates instead of withdraws, someone who understands that fear is natural, but abandoning connection is a decision. When you heal your own wounds, you stop confusing intensity with intimacy and distance with mystery. You begin to recognize stability as strength. The right connection will not collapse under the weight of reality. It will not disappear when vulnerability enters the room. It will remain. It will face discomfort. It will grow through uncertainty rather than escape from it, because love that is meant to last does not retreat when things become real. It becomes more honest, more grounded, more intentional. And when two people are ready, truly ready, fear no longer drives the connection. Growth does.